father of 10, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, author of Predictable Revenue with Merrill Tyler, author of From Impossible to Inevitable with Jason Lincoln, author of Income Operating System coming out some point in this year. Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Paul Morton, and we are talking about leadership, management, and the various lives that surround it. It's my joy, delight, and privilege to bring into my studio some of the smartest, wisest people I've been able to find for your delectation and enjoyment. And I hope that you do get a lot out of the conversations that we have here. When you realize that your management team has grown too fast, or you've inherited a new team, and the fastest, best lever you have for growth and improvement is attached firmly to those managers, get in touch. I help you run management, coaching, and training programs that'll make a big difference really quickly. You can find me at the Practical Leadership Academy website and on all the usual social channels. Aaron Ross, thank you very much indeed for joining me. So that was a fairly shorthand, short-changing introduction to somebody with your background. What, when you're talking about yourself, as we all want to do, is our favorite, well, at least it's my favorite topic, is what's important that people know about you?
You know, my first reaction is like, I have no idea, because there's so much stuff, but like you hit some highlights. There's like everyone says 10 children. I think it's important to know too, maybe not, but it's interesting right there. First of all, we're not a religious family because that's, at least in the States, most families are religious. That's everyone, I don't know if that's 99%, but right. Not that that's bad, but we're just not. Five of the 10 are adopted, 2 from my wife's first marriage, 3 bio kids together. So and of the adopted kids, one was adopted as a baby from Florida. One is a 4-year-old from China with a physical challenge. 2 teenagers we adopted, 16. One was roots from China, one from East LA, 8-year-old from Texas. All kinds of races, all kinds of origins, all kinds of ages, all kinds of sources. So diverse. We have a diverse family, which is...
You missed nappies. You missed diapers, didn't you?
For some of them, no. I went through 4 diaper stages because we had 3 bio kids plus 1 adopted baby. And also the 4-year-old, when we adopted him from China, it was still... because he has something called arthrogryposis. So he was in nappies for like 6 months once we got him. I don't remember, 3 months. I don't remember exactly. My wife went through a couple bonus diaper stages because she had 2 kids before we were married. And I always used to, they're all my children. I never differentiate other than saying, hey, there's, bio kids and others. And there's not like, I never used terms like step this or, but yeah. So we have a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you either are or you're not.
Yeah.
That's it.
That was always like my mental, which is like, I'm not trying to differentiate. They're all my children from different sources. And now they're aged 7 to 25. So we've, the first child we adopted, we got married 13 years ago. And so I went from 0 to 10 kids 0 to 9 kids in 7 years, 8 years. And then, 3 years later. So it was we hyperscaled the family.
Yeah. Hypergrowth, the hypergrowth model. Yeah.
Now I would say that what's important is like that, this intense incubator is not the right, let's call it a forge, right? Forge of a family, which has really been my main priority, is affected, driven, motivated so many other things on the business and the work side, the career side, and inform that. So they're very related. And as I get older, I'm doing, they're more and more related. So they used to be more separate, but
it's a massive constraint. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of people change the way that they live or when you have a heart attack, so all of a sudden you start to get fit, right? Or you lose your job, so then you start to become an entrepreneur and you start, I don't know, Burger King or whatever it was. In your case, you've got 7, 8, 9, 10 kids. So, Aaron, yes, darling, get a better job, make more money, buy a bigger house. Yes, darling.
Yeah, I had a lot of that. But I think that was, if people ask me in the past, like, how did I, create, be successful and make a lot of money? Because I made, 10 years, I had to make a lot of money. So I made like 8 figures income. And, I was motivated because I had kids. So, I'd done a lot, I worked at Salesforce and created the new sales system there and was very successful intellectually wise, not financially, but, career wise to start at Salesforce when it was a small company. And I wrote the book Predictable Revenue about that. I didn't publish that book, and I didn't really make a lot of money myself. Yeah, it's the Predictable Revenue book, until I had married and we had another baby on the way. And I was like, oh, I have to like make make more money. So I didn't make a lot of money at Salesforce. I started, there was a small company.
Yeah.
When I joined, there were 150, 200 people. So, and I joined as a, basically an SDR, like the most entry level job I had. So my equity was tiny. And when I left, I stayed 4 years and sold a lot of my stock to pay for divorce debt from my first marriage. So, it wasn't when I had kids. So got married. There was 2 kids already. They were like 4 and 6 or 5 and 7 at that time. And then we had a baby on the way pretty quickly. I was like, I gotta publish the book and get a partner and raise prices and consult seriously and nail my niche. Because up to that point, I resisted doing sales consulting because I just didn't want. So kind of that constraint of having a family and having to provide really made me kind of laser focus on what did I need to do to make the most money with the most time efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I was in this episode, the constraint of had not only a couple kids plus a baby on the way, and we had to get a bigger place and so on. And then the other constraint was I learned years before just working. I had this thing, I don't want to work more than 20, 25 hours a week because, I would get more things done if I worked more hours, but I would just lose sight of kind of like a bigger picture, these bigger ideas like breakthroughs. So it's like, how can I make hundreds, mid to high 6 figures working 20 hours a week to support a family? And I was I wanted to be very active. Am a very active parent, not just the driving and changing the diapers and making food and playing and all the things.
Yeah. I mean, you have this lovely little clip. I saw it via the Impossible to Inevitable book. And there's a resource page that comes with the book. And there's a little clip in there on YouTube from you. It's a day in Aaron's life.
Yeah.
And it's this 12, 15-hour day from dawn till dusk. And it's all childcare, all of it. And
Yeah.
like a day in your life, if you define yourself by that, that's a good starting point.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, it's that clip. It is that we had a new baby. We adopted a baby from Florida whose mother had been on troubled. So baby had to go through a detox period, and she'd wake up 6 times a night and feed her milk. And my wife was pregnant with another baby. Unplanned. Only 3 of our babies were planned, which was 1 biological and 2 adopted were planned. The rest kind of just happened or came to us. But that day, the clip you're talking about, so yeah, it's probably 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, and it's just, wake up and breakfast and, dance classes and playing and so on and at night, I think it's like 11:30. I'm like dancing a baby. And to be fair, like I probably had like 1 or 2 work calls, which are pretty boring, and it probably can't really, I don't know, it's hard to capture. So there was some work, but it was mostly, just constant running around, exhausting, not fun, but important. Just
that's it.
Family care.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's what's important.
Almost fun. There's a bit of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you don't. I find sometimes that the fun comes after you actually realize that. Oh, hang on, that was actually quite fun.
Yeah,
well, it wasn't fun at the moment, but it's on reflection that that's
yeah.
That's joyful. It's not fun. It's not happy. It's joyful. It's different.
Well, it's weird. Like one thing that's I think important, to me, if I step back, especially having seen the changes in the world and technology I'm 52, and not just the sales world, but just, and I have like a range of kids and I see kind of what they're dealing with. And, my belief is that emotional intelligence will be one of the defining, call it a skill, whatever you want to call it, like things that you will need to be successful in life, both in order to like make money, but also have a life you enjoy and navigate the complexity and the anxiety and the confusion and the overwhelm. And one thing I've learned is that feelings a lot more, to me, I feel like a lot more complicated and layered than I grew up with. If I think about growing up, there's kind of like people are happy or sad and there's love. And when I was younger, I thought my association, if I'm trying to remember, is, if you think, okay, love, does that mean kind of like easy and like exciting and like romantic love? Well, now I'm like, no, that's not the word. The word love has a very different meaning, which would be more like dedication and commitment and an emotional bond through thick or thin, right? Because I've had when my teenage sons was like crying on the ground with this intense anxiety over, whatever that is. And, it's like love is a practice where I'm practicing, like I don't feel good for a lot of reasons, but I'm practicing loving him. Again, I say we're practice because I may not feel it, but can get back into the state and like practicing love. Love is a skill, not a feeling. And so going back to this, if I circle back around to this day of so much childcare, like babies up, waking me up at night and playing too, like playing with kids in the backyard and sitting at dance class, watching cute moments. And the overall day is exhausting, right? So, having a big family, like the financial demands, the emotional demands, the physical demands are just talk about being pushed to the wall and past it for a decade, just at my complete limit. And then we can get to burnout later. But just saying, okay, there's could be an overall exhaustion or some overall feeling to the day or the year, but the day is so full of so many different moments of different types: frustration, sadness, joy, play, fun. And it's very easy to miss a lot of the moments because there's the overall like fog of frustration or fog of exhaustion or fog of uncertainty. And it's just interesting now, like getting older, to try to be like a sommelier. How do you parse out all these different complex moments and flavors and feelings in this kind of wine of life? Because they're all there. And they're so easy to miss when you're younger and you're just like, oh, I'm happy or I'm sad or I'm anxious. And you just miss so many of the things.
There's a few things in what you've said there, I think, you want to unpack. And you said you're 52. I turned 50 this year. And there's the idea that as we get to about this point in midlife and you start to look for your second wind, almost, it's, well, I've got all this behind me. Oh, I'm just going downhill towards death now. That's it. I'm done. Well, no, what are you going to do with this? What do you do with this? And your previous X number of years on this planet has been gathering knowledge, wisdom, and being paid for that knowledge and wisdom and
Hopefully.
experience. But now I think what I'm finding is that I'm almost pivoting to some extent to be, rather than I'm still paid for my experience and all that sort of stuff, but I'm more finding value and reward in asking good questions rather than coming up with good answers.
Yeah, it was that plus, there's that idea of, like when I was younger, I think a lot of young people like, okay, 20s, 30s, just like so focused on like making money, career, or whatever their version of their or dating or, I think a lot of people get to the point like I did, or like maybe getting married and so on. And, the way our societies work, at least the States, maybe probably the UK, because pretty similar. By the time, people in their 40s, could be a bit younger, a bit older, I think there's this natural time. Midlife crisis is a thing because you kind of get to the point of at least I was able to see, okay, there's a lot of societal things I carried and they get too heavy at that point. And my wife, the same thing. And so I think there's a natural time, at least for our societies, because can't speak to others, where we get to that point of like, okay, the first half of life did tons of things. And now, what do I actually want to do for me? I've lived a lot for other people. It could be for parents, for children, for a spouse, for partner, friends. And, now what do I want to do for myself?
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty common.
It leads, I think it feeds and leads. You talked about the love piece there and recognizing that as kind of a driver. And is it the be all and end all? Well, it depends on what sort. And as the author C.S. Lewis, he came out, we had the book called Four Loves. And he had the four different sorts of love as is defined by the Greeks. So you have storge, which is the affection, it's the fondness, it's the familiarity with your brother, your sister. And I think you wrote about it actually once in the back of, I think it was Impossible and Inevitable. The occasions where you find yourself falling into roommateness with your wife, and you realize, whoa, stop. No, that's not the relationship you want. What you want is that's the other sort of love. That's the eros. That's the romantic love that you need there. And then you have philia, which is the friendship one, which is the other set of relationships that we need to keep us sane. I think I've always said that friends are there to remind you that you're normal. Like, oh, you know what? It's okay. I'm going through this too. It sucks, but it's fine. And then you have the one I think you alluded to, which is the agape, which is the one that's there for despite everything else. It's unchanging. It's this is the Christian virtue of divine love, and that's the underpinning piece that holds everything else together. Okay, that's when you're talking about going off and finding yourself. You're talking about going off and doing what matters to you and
Yeah, I
being
think also,
valuable.
yeah, and loving your family or people close to you, the practice, I call it practicing it as regardless of how they're treating you. It's with the kids, so I could love my wife. Like lots of my wife or my family can be mean to me or each other by intention or habit.
Omission.
Yeah, yeah. And it's loving them could be the way I feel about them. It doesn't mean that I'm like I can allow them to, there's weird thing about boundaries, right? It's, I can love someone and see that they're have a habit or like a thing or like it's either children, right? One of my 8-year-old's like, Dad, I hate you. And it's like, I love you, I love her. And I can tell her that. And it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
For some people, it does bother me, but it's easier with some kids or some people. It's like I just see this as like like a thing, like a habit or a way that they're expressing something. They don't know how to express what they're really trying to say,
So
and not take it personally.
yeah, yeah. I
So
find it more challenging when it's somebody who you expect, and maybe that's just a miss of setting
uh,
expectation in my
where they use yeah, you use the word expect.
yeah. So I would expect, or I assume, I ask out of you and me, I assume that you have greater capabilities of expression of self-awareness than you evidently do. And you've just said something quite hurtful to me. And I'm thinking, actually, do you mean that? Or are you just kind of emotionally illiterate? And you talked about emotional intelligence there. And if it's somebody my age, I'm expecting that you'd worked out what life is by this point. And if you haven't, okay, do I have the energy to try and help you discover this or not? Because where are you in this journey, frankly?
Yeah, and again, I think I don't know how many people who listen to this would be actively managing teams, younger people, younger generations.
Most, I think.
Yeah, having families. It's very easy. Again, learning through experience. We have a lot of different kids, a lot of different temperaments to be judgmental,
Yeah.
to again make assumptions, to be frustrated, and we're going to be. But having you can call it empathy or maybe intuition. It's like the understanding, like the emotional intelligence of, at least for us, like having so many kids for so long, so many sources. I think I've seen a lot more variety of states of being, and so it gets easier to kind of say, okay, someone is acting out, and to kind of be able to understand them a bit more.
Mm.
Try rather than to kind of force them, assume they should be a certain way and do a certain thing because I want them to. It's like working with them to come up with, it could be like in cleaning a room, walking a dog, right? Someone doesn't want to do it, and sometimes I might understand. Okay, there's some task they don't want to do, and they might have a good reason. They're sick, or they didn't get enough sleep, or sometimes they just don't want to do it. And working out with them to kind of to know at least when is it something you just need to do it, and when just to lay that, just keep it that, when to have a chat about it, right? When you just, here's the law, when to have a chat, when to like give them some space. um I think we love to have simple rules, just have them do this, whether it's like salespeople or kids, and because simplicity feels satisfying. I know,
Yeah.
I don't have to figure out this difficult situation. I just have a rule to follow. Rules should be more guidelines, and I think this is going to be the nature of the future, rather than like arbitrary rules that seem to make a lot of companies that worked in the past. Just rules are rules. You follow the rules. People are growing up in a bit more complex time. They're going to be more, you're going to challenge the rules. Like, why is this even a rule? And you want to talk about it. And so it's kind of for yourself. It's for leaders knowing, again, when to lay down the law, when to have a chat, when to let someone to do it, and kind of looking for the best outcome of the team that way. So I feel like it's going to be a bit more, of a complex swim with teams in the future, because then also have people in person, you have people who are remote, different. There's just more variety in the future of all kinds. And so simple rules aren't often going to work as well as they used to. And we have to be prepared to have a bit more negotiation over how we work together and how we get to results together. And whether that's with your team or whether it's with your superiors or whether it's with customers.
Again, going back, and I'm not harping on your age because we're very similar, but I think there's an element to that of experience. And as you said, you've experienced lots of different types of kids. And in your 52 years on earth, you've experienced and worked with lots of different types of people. And you can look at certain types of behavior or responses to stimuli and say, that's because, or that could be because. So therefore, I'm not going to yell at them and chuck a shoe in their head. I'm actually going to try and work it out. Or as you said, in this case, I'm going to lay down the law, and you make that judgment call.
Yep.
The thread, I think, that comes from that to something else that you've spoken or written about is, I think, the understanding of cyclicality and rhythms and outcomes, in that most stuff you can work out as you go. And one of your points is, you mentioned the non-linear way of living. Now, you wrote a book called Predictable Revenue, and from impossible to inevitable. Okay, so in the impossibility turned into inevitability. You're creating something out of nothing. You're driving intentionality and deliberateness out of the chaos of life because you know it can be done. Because you know that if you jump in feet first, you'll suss it out. You'll work out. You'll bob to the top of the fast-flowing river and raft your way down into the shallows and paddle to the edge, and out you'll come, soaking but successful.
Yep.
How does constraints feed into that doing what feels right?
Yeah, well, I think that starts through that. A lot of things that worked for me in life, whether it was, starting a business, which failed, but that led, this good news, bad news story. I think it's really from China, right? I heard it from a kid's podcast, but, the short answer is, there's a village, right? There's a man who lives there with a son, and one day a wild horse just appears, and like, oh, great, we get basically free horse. The son says that, and the old man says, good news, bad news, who can say? And the next day, the son was riding the horse, and he falls off and breaks his arm. This is horrible. And the father says, good news, bad news, who can say? And then the next week, the local warlord came through recruiting, basically taking men to go off to war, and they left the son because his arm was broken. It's kind of good news, bad news, you can say. The whole point is, like, things happen, and we love to think, oh, this is good news or bad news, but sometimes we don't know where this thing will lead to. And we think we can predict the future, which we can't. It's an illusion. So a lot of, going back to like having my business fail led me to join sales. Like, I needed to learn sales. Okay, I'll get a job at Salesforce. And that led to a great success there. All right. Which then led me to leaving Salesforce to kind of, do other things, got married. But a lot of what's led me to do things is something feels right or interesting, and I want to do it. And it may or may not make logical sense, right? Starting a business, that made sense. Like, I want to do it, made sense. Getting a sales job at Salesforce, so entry-level job, that actually, if I wanted to do it, and it made sense to me because I wanted to learn that skill, but not sense to a lot of people, because I went from being CEO of some internet company, or you call it a young CEO, to entry-level, sales job. A lot of people, their ego, or I didn't let my ego stop me. But, getting married and having 3 kids, but then adopting, and adoptions, let's talk financially. Adoptions can be $40,000 or a few thousand, depending on the source. And then we always had kids or adopted and then made the money work later, right? Did we ever have enough money to kind of like have the next kid or adopt the next kid? No. So it's always like, this feels right. Do we have we adopted a kid from China who's now, when he's 4, now he's 15, or this baby from Florida, or older kids. Like, do we have a big enough house? No. Do we need to get a bigger house? Yes. Do we need to pay for the adoption? Yes. Do we have that money? No. But we'll just work it out. So like an example was like literally, 2016, I think it was, we were paying for an adoption, and we knew it was really important, and we didn't have the money for the last fee. And so we figured, we need $11,000 to like pay this last bit. And we figured out, we just got $11,000 on the dot by pawning my wife's jewelry, right? To get the cash and like send this last fee off. And so we were always figuring out financially, especially, how to like make the family work, whether it was like by making money sometimes, using debt a lot of times, pushing out bills a lot of times. But the family was the most important for us because it felt the most important. So for us, I'm not saying family is the most important. I'm saying it always felt the most important. We made other things work. Even when the spreadsheets never worked, the finances never worked on spreadsheets. Logically in our families, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, it makes no sense. You're having another baby, you're adopting another this, or what are you doing? But that was always just what felt right. Or moving to Europe, because we moved from Los Angeles to Edinburgh in January 2020, or going back to career, I was famous in my niche around sales consulting and made a lot of money doing it. Again, like 8 figures, and with my books probably drove like 50 million to my businesses over since 2011 ish. I made like 10 million out of that, which all went into the family in different forms or a house. But I was just like so sick of that business, and the partner I was in, I couldn't work with him. I was like, I just can't do this anymore, and I'll have to figure out the money, everything separately. I couldn't go. Now, logically, actually, in that space of it was outbound prospecting, outbound training, outbound outsourcing. I knew too that I didn't want to do it anymore, and I hadn't wanted to do it for a while, but I had to make money, and that's the easiest way too. But it just got to the point where, well, emotionally, I was just like done. I couldn't do it. I could think too, like, well, there's no way I could keep this going because I don't have the energy or the interest to do another breakthrough book. I'd written a couple books, very proud of them, Predictable Revenue and From Impossible to Inevitable.
The CEO.
Yeah, and it's just there wasn't anything in me or the team to be able to do some sort of breakthrough to get above the noise and to keep the brand growing. And I just didn't want to. So I couldn't work with my partner anymore. I just wasn't interested in the whole business and the whole space, and it was boring and exhausting, and I was just done. I just hit the wall, and there's a lot of not just the work itself, but also I was just physically and emotionally wiped out from like having 10 years of like babies and so many young kids, just hit the wall. So again, this whole thing around how you going to support the family, I don't know, but I can't do this thing anymore. So in that case, we negotiated a buyout, which over a few years would give me some money in order to create something new. Although after like a year, a little over more than a year, the business was struggling, so we had to stop the payments. So there's just, again, what I found is that even when there's a lot of fear that come up with, because we all want to be safe, I want to have a baby or more babies or adopt, and like, but there's not enough money. Do it anyway. We'll figure it out. I'm at the point I have to get out of this business. It's not a want to. I actually at the point I had to. How are we going to pay for things? We got to figure it out. And there's lots of steps, and it's not like it's a simple thing, but it's like following that, what they call intuition, or like we need to do something, want to do something, and timing can be hard to judge, but it may not make sense. Sometimes it does. A lot of times it doesn't, and still doing it. Like that's really the thing I think has paid off both with career, family, happiness, everything for me. One of the things.
So you jump in feet first and work it out later. Now, I've got a very good friend of mine who is as free as spirit. He does 5-stage dancing. He's super wonderful, wonderful guy. And he says, quite surprisingly, given when you see him from the outside, he says that it takes an awful lot of discipline to be a free spirit. It takes an awful lot of work. Now, you talk about you had this constraint. You don't want to work more than 20, 25 hours. What do you think?
The word, so people, I just have okay, I'm going to be nitpicky because the word discipline.
Yeah.
Like, you look up the definition of the word discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, if you do it, I could
I'm
probably
going to do it right now. You keep telling me.
If you could do it, yeah. All right. And I don't know how much this really matters, but I think the word discipline, but to me, it implies.
Here we go. Controlled behavior resulting from disciplinary training, self-control. Control obtained by enforcing compliance or order. The self-control gained by requiring rules or orders be obeyed. And this is self-control.
Yeah, there's a lot of this which I think implies doing things you don't want to do. Mm. Again, there's like the enforcement of rules, which I prefer the word determination, which it's more around when you're really determined to do something, you're not forcing yourself to do stuff you don't want to do because it's part of the rules. Like discipline or disciplining, I think to me just has, I think a lot of people like that word because there's in the online, people like this idea of there's some punishment or penalty to get what you want. You need to, kind of be punished or, be penalized. And people who aren't getting what they want need to be punished more. There's this weird, I don't know, determination, I think for me works a lot. I'm very determined in certain things and a few things where I'm very determined about creating a family that has strong bonds within itself, and very determined to be right now to find work that I really like to do for the sake of the work itself and to make even more money at that. So there is, again, discipline, again, maybe be splitting hairs to some extent, but I do feel
words are important. Words are important. Yeah.
Yeah. So determination is if I want to physically feel good, I'm determined to do that. Yeah, I'll get up sometimes earlier, sometimes good, whatever. I'll do what I need to do, which is different than discipline, which again to me feels like you're not even doing what you wanted to do. You're just doing things you're being just, I don't know. It doesn't feel as helpful to me in aligning with like who you are, what you actually want to do, and how you're going to do it.
Firmness of purpose and resolve. There we go.
Firmness, yeah, kind of doing what you need to do and want to, doing what you need to do to get what you want, I guess is similar but different. And I think, I think the word discipline too, because there's so much in society and growing up around people need to obey rules that others set.
Yeah.
That's where it usually comes from, is I think more so versus I'm going to set rules that for myself that I'm going to follow.
That's my take on it, however. I mean, my take is that discipline is actually self-discipline. It's, I don't want to drift. I want to go in a certain direction. And in order for me to go in a certain direction, I have to do things consistently. I have to keep on doing things that will eventually get somewhere I want to go.
Yeah. And I think, look, I think it's too like finding some version that feels right to you, that feels helpful.
Yeah.
Whatever the wordplay is.
Yeah. Fair enough.
To me, also discipline a bit. I've lived for quite a while in a space where it feels and sometimes is impossible to have regularity in almost anything.
Yeah.
There's just constant, and constant changes in schedules. Kid gets sick, school starts, school stops, kids are back, doctor's appointment. Oh, you can only get this, this other appointment. You can only, it drives me insane sometimes. And there's some periods of some regularity, but so it's almost like discipline for me. I feel like I got to the point where I never use that word anyway, but doesn't feel helpful because I kind of feel like I need that along some sort of schedule where it tied to me, feels a bit usually tied to some sort of schedule regularity, versus determination where I'm going to, regardless of what's happening here, I'm going to find some way through.
That I think I resonate more with. So if you're finding some way through, you were burnt out, you're finding, I use the word burnt out, you didn't, but you're at an end of your previous.
Oh yeah, totally.
What are you doing now? What are you determined to do now? Because you mean I don't know, about helping people write books.
Yeah. So the way I describe it is, I think it's important. A bit of the story is we have a big family. I've made a lot of money, but we still need to make money. Right? Huge. It's like the bills are crazy. So it's not like I can afford to not work and it's 2021. So it's been about 3 years when this buyout. So I left my prior business, which was really almost all the money I was making. Most of the money has been through consulting. So maybe 5 or 10% was, so if it's like over a bit more than a decade, it's called like a dozen years. It's called like $10 million, and like may say rounding up like $1 million maybe from royalties, and maybe $1 million from speaking, and a couple million from like equity advisory, and like 6 or something from consulting. Stuff from consulting or the business, some salary, and to see most of that disappear is difficult. But the golden handcuffs, but like I was just dead. It was just physically make me sick thinking about going back to that type of work. I'm actually doing sales consulting in that business and even hands-on consulting, right? Because there's a backstory. So walking away, all right, I'll get a buyout to be a few years to kind of recreate something. Then that stops. So there's been a scramble for a couple of years financially. There's always a scramble, but even more so between, again, some projects to come up or some family. So help from my family, from, again, like sometimes it's like just not paying bills or debt or all kinds of creative sources to get through this period while I figure out like, what do I want to do? My whole thing is like, I need to find work. I need to find work that I like to do for the work itself.
Yeah.
What is that? So I started out with saying, I have no idea what I want to do. And I thought about this for years, but again, I was just so exhausted and so at the wall. I just had zero space or energy to even think about that beyond like the next, it's always, there's like just so much like the family, the bills, the consulting work. So, it took me some time, but okay, after maybe a few months or a year, I was like, okay, I know now I want to write more. I'm working on new books, speaking. I have actually a lot of speaking this year in Brazil, funny enough. So writing, speaking, I want to get people together for retreats at some point, probably writing retreats, really around books at some point. Coaching people on business books. I really like that. So there's all these pieces. It's all around kind of interesting people sharing and distilling ideas and then resharing them through speaking and books for the most part. Having said that, the family is really important. So there's some blend because I learned so much through the family that gets informed into what I want to do and how I write in these ideas. One of the books is called Eat, Shit, and Grow. It's more about this, and there's income operating system. But so I'm making some money, not enough yet. But I've gotten to the point where in the past I was like, is there work that I would love? Is that even a thing? And now I'm like, okay, yeah, actually, I can see yes, I have and will find work that I really like to do that I love to do for the sake of the work itself, even if I wasn't getting paid. Okay. Can I make as much or more money at that than I used to? Or do I have to trade off? Is there work I love, but don't make much money? Or better, can I find work that I love and I make as much or more that I used to? And now, like, yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it or how long it'll take. But now, like, I know it's going to happen. I don't exactly know the details, but it's going to happen. So that's where I am. Uh, and I do believe there's this weird, I'll have these knowings. And for years, I've felt like, okay, I'll probably found some unicorn type, co-found some kind of company that's really fast growing. And I don't think that's because I necessarily want to, but I think that's going to happen. It's just a weird thing in life where I don't know if you believe in higher power, I for sure do now at this point. But having a big family and so much chaos and uncertainty, there's kind of these times where it's like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, or I don't know this. And other times, like, okay, I now I have a belief or some feeling I can't quite explain, and I've kind of gone into that zone now of things are on there. We've gone through the hardest part around, at least work wise, like not knowing this and leaving the other stuff, and now I got clues, now I got Lego pieces, and it's not together yet. I haven't built the castle or the plane, but I've got I've got a lot of the pieces, and it's gonna happen. That's the best way I can explain it. That's where it is.
It's like you're assembling a whole stack of talent, and you've got a whole stack of talent, and surrounding that is a whole mess of opportunity. And if you've got the talent and the opportunity, then all it takes is time.
Yeah, and I think too a lot of this is this radar, this feeling for like, what do I actually want to do? What do I like to do? Because in the past, yeah, I mean, mentally it wouldn't be that hard to say, okay, let's start a SaaS company, some company and do that, this, that, and the other. And yeah, it's not saying it's easy, but I don't want to do that. And I'll give you an example in this space where I really need to find work that I like to do because of the work itself. Writing is a bit tricky because the act of writing doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but I like having written. I think there's famous people have talked about this a lot. But like coaching is an interesting one, book coaching, because I remember I was talking to people about book coaching, and I was trading messages on LinkedIn with some people around like their ideas and get feedback. And I'm like, I liked it. I was having fun doing it. Right? I really like that. And I like meeting with people and talking about ideas. And so I get some energy from that. And I can tell there's like, kind of like certain kinds of sales consulting or other kinds of work or like even online, like social posting. Like I just don't like that. There's sometimes I might do it because I feel like I have to, but I just don't like it. And like I need to focus on most of how kind of work do I actually like to do? What or work I would pay to do? How can I have more of that? And all the stuff that it drains me, that's not interesting and feels obligatory, not do, or get someone else to do it for me. And I'm still sorting through that. It's like a slow, it's like, I call it the labyrinth because this is the basis of a new keynote I'm doing because I can't see past the next turn, which really every day is a different day. I can't see past like today. I don't know where it's going. As long as I make the right turn for today, what feels right. Sometimes I get clues around, like, oh, that is like an interesting thing, or I have a talk, I got to put together a new talk, or so I'm still like gathering these things, but there's no vision for where this is going other than the feelings. So in other words, my goals are not financial goals or this. It's like the feeling. My goal is to really enjoy the work I've got for the most part. Yeah, okay, that's not all going to be ponies and roses, but to be feeling to like the work and the people I'm working with, and to make a lot, more money at that than it was before. That's kind of that's my goal. And I don't use a spreadsheet and there's not like by 3 months I'll do X, Y, and Z, and by 12 months I don't do any of that shit. Never really did. Sometimes, but it just never really worked. So yeah, that's the radar. It's just feelings, really.
Well, I think there's a lovely thing that, a feeling is an emotion, and emotion comes from movare, which is motion, to move, right? It moves you
Yeah, and
forward.
discerning. So in the keynote, I went through this, kind of my 30s was learning, and then 40s was earning, and then I was burning down, and now I'm discerning. So I'm really exploring that I can discern like what kind of versus like jumping in, because I totally get. I've had my family always like, you need to get a job and make more money. And like a lot of the jobs, like, it just would like kill me. That is not going to help. Maybe in the short term, but I just know because of the feelings that is going to short term maybe make people feel good or like there's activity, but I need to continue. Like, and I get royalties, like, so we have enough money in to get by and family and so on, just to keep the lights on while get more of the clarity bit by bit, discerning what's really going to be this right combination of some new business.
Mm.
And I can't predict what that is because it hasn't been done before.
There you go.
No, I'm not going to do some SaaS, this consultant company or so. I know I don't want to do all that. It's something new I'm going to do for myself that I don't know what it is, but I can tell that discerning like that's right, that's wrong. And it's slow. It feels slow. Right? This is over years. I don't know if it's 6 months away or a couple of years. But again, I passed the tipping point of can I do this? Is it part of all that? But oh yeah, I can do it. It can happen. It's going to happen. Don't know when, don't know how, but yeah, it's happening. And I'm glad, like at 52, it's like that kind of emotional intelligence or experience where if I had in my 20s or 30s, like I have no clue yet at this point. I still be freaking out because I need to know kind of like what's the plan and like where are things going and you know what's the spreadsheet say and what kind of business is this and yada yada yada.
And if you
And
turned, and if your 20-year-old turned to you and said, wow, woo, your
oh, they
response
do.
would be, it's fine. It'll
Yeah,
work out.
they do turn to me like that. They're like, oh, man. I'm like, like what do do? What are your options? Like, what do you really want to do? What do you think's important? Okay, the money thing. Don't make that the most important thing. It's a consideration. We had this talk with my 15-year-old about college, and like, we don't have right yet a lot of or any extra money to help. They have like a small college trust, which would pay for not even 1 year of private school in the States by the kids from the grandparents. It's enough to kind of get going. And then he's like, if I go to the States, I have to pay crazy amounts of money. I have crazy debt. Great. In the UK, in Scotland, it'd be free. In the UK, it'd be it's £10,000 a year. In the Europe, so these like okay, the financial part it's important consideration, but it's not the most important thing. What do you want to do? I don't know. Okay, let's think about that. Well, what else is important to you? Do you want to live? I don't know. So he has a list of what he doesn't want, which is a lot of debt coming out of college. I get that. But what do you want? Doesn't know yet. We got to look at that column too. Same thing. If you're like, if you have a job and you need to pay the bills, I feel that. I got 10 kids. I still got to pay their bills.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, oh, you want to be an artist, like quit your job and go to art school. But I'm saying it's to this extent you can. And sometimes you're in a space where you can do this and sometimes you're not. I went through it 10 years ish where I just couldn't even think about that. But when it starts to feel important, think like, what are the things that are important to you? What do you want to do? How do you want to feel? Or maybe where do you want to go? In addition to the things you don't want. And whatever that looks like, it might be something that happens in a month or maybe 10 years. There's things I've held on to and ideas I've had for like 15 years that aren't ready yet. Like expert now, I don't know, just stuff. But it's important to think, to start to tap into like, what do you want for yourself? And not judge it too quickly as, oh, it's irresponsible or it's this, that, the other. Like, oh, what do you want to do? I want to do puzzle. I love puzzles. I went to the World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship a couple years ago just for fun. Anyone can go, by the way. I'm not special. And to me, I'm looking at Sudoku puzzles. Is that something? It's like I'm not attached to whether that's going to make me money or not. Could it? And somehow I might meet someone. Who knows? So I think it's important, like this. Have for anyone, an executive or anyone else, like what are these things that these whispers you have, interests you have, things you want to do, things that feel important or interesting, and to kind of cultivate those and listen to those without shooting them down too quickly, without assuming, oh, if it's not going to happen this month, I can't like. And those were a lot of these things. That's where again for like having kids and adoptions and writing have led me over the years to all the things I've got that I feel successful with, which include not just career and money, but mostly family. And you can cultivate these, start earlier, honestly. Even my 15-year-old, like one of his big things this summer, because school and screens squeeze out. So, or when you're older, jobs and screens squeeze out a lot of this. It overtakes all your extra energy, your extra thought. So like when it sings this summer, we have the screens mostly away with the kids. And we have a bunch of kids at the house that can play together. But they'll do other things where it's not just like, they'll have other crafts activities. They can do some gaming together. But his big sister, I asked her, hey, can you also, because she's not a parent, talk to your brother and help cultivate, like this summer, like help him come up with, like, he's got other interests and hobbies that he's forgotten about because of school and screens. Like help him cultivate that if you can in college. It takes a bit more of, I think, a gentle interest. And I think it's, if you're it's a bit trickier when you're an adult and you're a 45-year-old VP of sales at a SaaS company, because maybe hopefully you have maybe a men's group of friends or a women's group or whatever that your version is, or on people who could be supportive. But it's pretty rare to find people who you can talk to who will, I think, be having a helpful way. Oh, you want to travel, you want to do knitting, you want to be a volunteer someplace. And rather than just saying, oh yeah, go for your passion, kind of be a bit more thoughtful around, yeah, how, what does that mean? Or how can you do that? Or, kind of sit with it and not have to do something with it right away. Because a lot of times, for me at least, these things kind of bubble for years. And I don't need, if I try to, like, oh, I'm gonna go to do this stuff with it, it kind of kills it. And I don't have the energy, or I feel, oh, I can't do it. Either I don't have time, energy, or interest yet, or I do. I don't know. This timing thing is weird. So long story short, I think it's just coming back to, for people, a lot of these things going back to like what feels right, but even if it doesn't make sense, a lot of times there are these little whispers or like hints or feelings that are so subtle and quiet, and they drowned out by work or school and screens. But those are the things which end up at some point in time, often longer than you think or want, being these incredible sources of interestingness, joy. It could be money or things that are important to your life. That's how it's worked for me.
I think the Japanese call it ikigai, which is the
Yeah.
influence of what you want, what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what society needs, and what you can get paid for.
Yeah. Well, again, what are you passionate about? I think most people listening to this, and I would have said for a long time, like, besides family, well, like, I don't know.
No, I have no idea.
I don't know.
Lots of things. I like flying kites, driving my car, drinking beer, hanging out with my kids. If I can get a job that does all of these, it's great. Kite flying, beer drinking, car drinking, dad.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But again, what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
Again, it's not an easy, and you
So,
know what? Yeah, it's, by the way, it's fine. Like, you don't have to. I think that's the thing in society. Like, oh, if you're not passionate, there's this implied, if you're not passionate about something, then you're missing out, or there's a problem with you. Like, what else,
okay.
yeah. That's not how it works. And not passionate about work, or has to be, or a lot of people don't have to. You don't have to like your family. A lot of people don't like their families.
But you still have to love them. You still
You
have
don't
to
have,
love them. Well, this is that different. There's that agape love, right?
there's a legal requirement to care for them, but a lot of people don't. Well, let's be honest. A lot of families, a lot of parents don't know how to express love to their kids in the way, a feeling of love where someone feels loved. They don't. Did you grow up with that? If you did, you were lucky. I think if you grew up, your parents knew how to express love where you felt cared for and felt loved, then you are an exception to the rule.
Yeah, yeah. It's a rare thing. It's a rare thing. It's something that I actively cultivate at home with my children.
Yeah, it's a skill, not a feeling, I think is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the thing.
I heard someone say that. I was like, oh, that is really insightful. It's a practice.
Yeah, it's something you learn. It's a practice, and it's the thing. It's one of the guidance pieces of guidance if your marriage is struggling, or if you do feel like roommates, is fake it, pretend. What does somebody who's in love with their wife do? Do that shit. Do it a lot. Do it repeatedly for weeks and weeks, and guess what will happen?
Yep.
You are.
I think that's a great point. And one story is, there's like the 5 years of hell where, because just over this huge family, it's easy to say, oh, like, like in the cost around like time, energy, not time, money, financial, money, energy, physical energy, emotional energy, just taxed. My wife, especially for different reasons, for like 5 years, just, it was rough. I just did my best. And I got better over the years of like acceptance and love, and not being romantic. Cause again, that was not something I feel like I had the energy for, like notes and things, but I just did my best. And at some point, it took like 5 or 6 years. I mean, we're doing amazing now. So it's, yeah, I don't know. Life is
Non-linear. Non-linear, to say the least. Yeah.
definitely, yeah, never. It'd be nice to have some linear something sometime.
Yeah.
Money, but it's like, again, it's another reason I believe in a higher power, because
Yeah.
and just the life, all the coincidences and the way just things happen. Doing ayahuasca too. Highly, I wouldn't recommend it. Ian, it's something where if you feel like, you hear about something like, that feels like I want to do that, you should do it. And if you feel like, It's not for everybody.
The Christians call it God instances. There's no such thing as a coincidence of God instant. Yeah.
No. Oh, I got it.
Hello.
Speak of the devil.
There we are.
My time anyway.
All right. I'm going to wrap up with one question, which is, if you can tell the world one thing, I'm going to give you 10,000 billboards. You can write one thing all over the world for one. The whole world is going to know what Aaron said.
Well, okay. My first reaction, I would say it's real, but I always think God, life is so weird. Not helpful, but what would be a helpful thing?
Life is so weird. That's a pretty good statement.
Is it? I don't know. It's hard to express though, actually, how weird it is in a billboard. Life is so weird. But no, I don't have the words, but I think what I would aim for is a way to try to remind people that people, other people include, especially your family, your friends, but like everyone's different. It's more the practicing acceptance and appreciation, and love might be too strong a word for this, but like acceptance or appreciation for other people, regardless of their differences. Everyone's just doing their best, even when it doesn't look like it to you, including you.
Positive intent. Something
Maybe that's it. It's everyone's doing their best, even when it doesn't look like it, including yourself.
We'll take that. Aaron Ross, thank you very much indeed for joining me. And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you for joining me. If there's ever anything I can do to help you on your journey, then do please reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn and all the usual sources. Do please subscribe, leave me your 5-star review, and most importantly, get in touch with your comments and feedback. It's really how I grow, and that's what I'm doing this for. Thanks again.